and welcome back everyone to the video series dedicated show on MTV that wants some answers. That's right, we're talking about The Challenge Season 40 Battle of the Eras Episode 20, The Reunion Part 1. Now the review and recap for the reunion will be a little bit different than the normal, as I won't go through every single talking point. I won't go in chronological order of what happened in this reunion. I will touch on some subjects, starting with what I deem the most interesting, going all the way down until we get close to towards the end of the video, where I'm talking about stuff that wasn't really that thrilling or that exciting or really didn't make a difference it was brought up or not. I will always ring the bell that the challenge doesn't really need a reunion at the end of every single season, as throughout the entirety of the season as it goes on, you can count on the cast going to social media, doing lives, and then spilling everything there, where by the time we get to the reunion, it's kind of old news. We'll just get through it. We'll have a fun time as I watch this anyways. I took a good amount of notes anyway, so let's jump into this, starting with who is at the reunion. Well, we had 7 people from Era 1 at the reunion: Brad, Aneesa, Laurel, Derek, Jody, Tina, and Rachel. We had 8 people from Era 2 with Aviv, Bananas, Cara, Derek, Emily, Laurel, Nehemiah, and Ryan. Then we had 6 people for each Era 3 and Era 4. Avery, Devin, John A, Jordan, Nia, Tori, Jenny, Josh, Kylan, Michele, Olivia, and Theo. We don't need this many people. Why do we have to have 7 people from Era 1 at the reunion when half of them didn't even make it halfway through the game? With Era 2 having 8 people, half of them said absolutely nothing in Part 1. And Nehemiah was really interesting. Right when the first question was asked to Tina about how the challenge has changed, Nehemiah gets up and walks off stage to go vomit. You know, he is upchucking off camera, but we can hear it because his mic is still live. He does get back on stage to a spatter of applause, but by the time the next question is being asked, he is back off, walking off a stage. So I'll say it right now, Nehemiah is getting more camera time for leaving the stage than I think he would have if he just sat there waiting for a question. Avery and John A are kind of just hanging out, waiting for hopefully Part 2. I know Tony's going to be Zoom called in so that he and Avery can talk about their stalemate one last time. Now, I did mention Tina. She did get the first question of the reunion, and bless Tina for trying to rile up the cast. She wanted the conversation to flow, but some of what Tina was doing kind of fell flat. She kind of called out Jordan, saying he wasn't a worthy champion, which a lot of these little moments that they try to like catch everybody off guard fell flat. One question that got the biggest reaction overall came from a targeted question where Michele had to answer, who is the most overrated challenger? And Michele says CT, where everybody is like gasp, shocked, start to laugh that Michele would say CT, a 5-time challenge champion, somebody who won back-to-back seasons of 36 and 37. And then she tried to talk her way out of it, tried to put some sense into this, saying like, oh, well, I only did a couple of seasons with CT, like season 37, and people were like, the season that he won? And she's like, oh, well, I only watched until I was eliminated, which was episode 4, so she didn't even know that CT won season 37. That got the biggest reaction out of everybody. Another big reaction came when, on a targeted question, Devin had to answer if he was still loyal to Amanda. And he said, no, I'm anti-Amanda because she took some shots at people that I love, like Tori, like Michele, and so I'm no longer looking out for Amanda. Amanda, who is dressed up like the devil, gets her own special seat. When she comes out, it was a shock to a lot of people. She was firing at Devin. She was firing at Michele. She was firing at Corey, which then leads Corey to like throwing and flicking holy water on his laptop camera, which I thought was really, really funny. But those moments are few and far between. Again, like I said, the entrance to Amanda was great and exciting, but halfway through, she's off camera for the most part, and I kind of forgot that she was even there at the reunion. Like, why is she off camera so much of the time? Why couldn't she have a special seat in Era 3? Because she was on this season. Towards the end of the reunion, we do have a conversation between Cara and Laurel, where it comes into question what happened between their fight with each other and how did it involve Michele. According to Laurel, there was a party the night before. Laurel said some nasty things to Michele because she took Michelle's joke too literally. The next day, they talk, but still Laurel's like, look, I guess I understand your joke, but we're never gonna be friends. Apparently it got heated according to Michele, and then Cara came in, swooping in to be a support for Michele. Bananas then tries to get each lady to confess to being equal to blame for what happens in the challenge house between them. Cara does acknowledge that she has a hand in this, but there are times in the challenge house where you can have an argument with somebody, and sometimes an argument can go way further than what it should. It crosses a line, taking low blows. And for Laurel, she just decides to always go to the lowest of lows. Laurel throws this right back at Cara, saying that Cara can think that. If Cara sees that as going low, then that's a reflection of her. Then Laurel tries to say these inspirational quotes that you see on these doctor office posters and stuff, like hang in there, peace and love to you, be calm and stay long, or whatever it is. But Laurel's trying to stay civil and really have nothing to say in this moment, decides that she is just going to be robotic. I want her to have peace and love and honesty, which, can I just say, I'm okay with that. If you have nothing nice to say, I would rather Laurel just be completely apathetic, completely robotic, and be completely emotionless instead of her getting up, yelling in people's faces, and then having security having to jump in. I'm sure a lot of the challenge audience would love to see that big of a moment happen, but we kind of already saw that on the Challenge 40 to a certain extent, and I don't want to see it happen again. Laurel and Cara can agree on is that they don't want this to be a story going further. Nothing. They don't want to talk about this. They want all of this stuff to be buried, and Cara can go hang out with her new friendships. Laurel can do whatever the heck she wants and let them just go in their own separate directions. Would you do another season with each other? Cara says, sure, whatever. I'm cool with competing against anybody, and I'll do another season competing against Laurel. And Laurel said no. The majority of this reunion centered around a handful of people. Johnny versus Devin, Michele, and Tori. First, to get out of the way, the Johnny versus Tori situation, the main part here is that Tori was frustrated how Johnny was taking shots at Devin. So Tori decided to put her friendship with Devin over her friendship with Bananas. And Bananas says that ultimately Tori doing that hurt her from having an easier season, because if he was always targeting her, Tori, then he was protecting some of the strongest women like Jenny and Rachel, who made it to the final and won. And can I just say, I'm glad for that, because it made for a better season to have these two warring sides of the house between Bananas and Tori. So I appreciate that there was this tension between the two. If they would have been working together the entire time, this season would have been boring on top of boring. Moving over to Johnny versus Devin and Michele. Johnny's side of the story says that Devin came up to him, telling him that by midway through the game, Devin is coming after Johnny and sending him home. Devin's side of the story, what Bananas said to him about having too much going on outside of the house, and 3 weeks in, Bananas would self-eliminate himself because he just has way too many things outside of the house and he can't be here for too long playing the game. But it does seem like people are corroborating or agree that they heard Johnny say something like this. Devin says he called out Bananas, and after hearing that said, I will give you 6 weeks. If you are here after 6 weeks, then I will go after you and try to send you home, because that's what you really want. Bananas at first tries to shake his head, but then, I don't know, kind of agrees with it. I don't know what to make of this, but Johnny sticks to his story that he was looking out for Michele and didn't want her heart broken, because in the past, prior to this season, Devin and Michele tried to have a situationship and it just wasn't working out, and Michele kind of had her heart broken when Devin wasn't really in the right headspace to be in a relationship. So Bananas did say something to Michele, looking out for her as a friend at first, because Johnny does say that at first he wasn't looking to split them up for game purposes. He was mainly saying it because he was trying to be a friend to Michele. But then after it kind of went through and some things were said, it sounds like it kind of morphed into wanting to break them up. I don't know. It was kind of weird how this whole conversation went, but Michele at one point just says, thank you for being a friend, but putting yourself in that and trying to say like Devin's trying to put a wedge in between us didn't sit well with Michele. Devin wants an apology for Michele, and Bananas says he will give an apology if Devin claims that he is a hypocrite, because in season 38, Tori and Devin did come up to Johnny Bananas saying that Mariah was using him for a game. Now they go through this whole elaborate plot that they came up with a game plan to get Mariah to admit that she is using Johnny Bananas for a game back in season 38, but then they called the whole thing off. Now Devin does say that Mariah mentioned to Tori and some of the other people that if it weren't for the challenge house and in the game, she wouldn't go for Johnny Bananas or date him because he is not her type. We all saw how that ended, and they weren't really all that exclusive. So, you know what? It's whatever. It's whatever. You can take it for how it is. But at the end of this whole thing, Johnny Bananas says he doesn't take his work home with him, and that he has nothing against Devin and Michele, and because they're still together, he wishes them the best. This all ends with Johnny giving Michele a hug after a weird, jokey, kissy thing, and then he goes and plants one on Devin. Let's move on to some of the more little subjects / who cares section of this. They do go talk to the couples where Theo talks about maybe he's gonna move over to the US to be closer to Olivia. Olivia's tattoo of Theo's name behind her ear is real, but something more shocking is that she says she owns her own tattoo parlor. All right, Olivia, using that winning prize money from Love Island US, you bought yourself a tattoo parlor. Very, very interesting. As I mentioned, Devin and Michele are still together. Devin does not view himself as a marrying kind of guy, but if he were to marry somebody, he could see himself marrying Michele. Johnny was targeted with a question of who is his favorite Johnny Bananas angel, and he picks Jenny because they won season 35 together. Also, the whole thing about him clipping toenails in the season was brought up, so of course he had to then take off his shoe and socks and pull out some toenail clippers and start clipping his own toenails yet again. Majority of Era 1 got talking points because they were asked, why did you guys stink so bad in the game? How could you lose so many daily challenges and eliminations to the point where only one of you could last more than midway through the game? Speaking of Era 1, we have Aneesa going in on Rachel saying that she is super selfish and she should have stood on business instead of passing it off on CT for her to have been sent in the first elimination after the Open Era Invitational against Katie. Rachel comes back at her and says that the team would have turned on Rachel if she would have thrown in Jody instead of Aneesa. Aneesa seems a little shocked by this, but then Brad backs up Rachel saying, Aneesa, she's right. But that is it for Reunion Part 1. Not a whole lot of interesting moments. Again, we got to hear some of the Cara and Laurel stuff. We got to hear from the Johnny versus the Vacation Alliance plus Michele and everything. That took a majority of the entire reunion, and then everything else was just little blips, of Michele having a really, really bad hot take of CT being the most overrated challenger, and Nehemiah getting up and down to go yak. But we do have a reunion part 2 happening next week. Then officially season 40 will be wrapped up. But now I turn it over to you. What do you think about the reunion part 1? Let me know down in the comment section below. Do you feel like the reunions are significant, that we need a reunion for the challenge seasons? Let me know that as well. What was your favorite segment? Who was the best dress? And who do you think could have not been on the stage because they really didn't have a whole lot to contribute? Or do you think that everybody should have been there and maybe there was key people that should have actually been on the reunion instead? We are 1 week away from the Challenge 40 being officially done, and then we're 2 weeks until the Challenge All-Stars 5 Rivals begins. But now I want to give a special shout out thank you to everyone who supports me over at patreon.com/angelcakevids. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you to everyone who's watching this video up to this point. I'll be back really, really soon with more Challenge 40 content, more Challenge All-Stars Rivals content, more challenge content, more content in general. But until then, peace.